During the divorce, my daughter told me, "I'm choosing mom, even though she cheated, because she needs me more than you." I said, "I understand," and let her go. Years later, she saw me walk my stepdaughter down the aisle and screamed, "You replaced me!" I just smiled and said, "You made that choice first." Hello, Reddit I Plus here. My name is Ryan Hale and I'm 47 years old. If someone had told me a decade ago that I'd be walking another man's daughter down the aisle while my own child watched from a distance, convinced she'd been replaced, I wouldn't have believed it. But life doesn't always unfold in straight lines. Sometimes, love waits too long for recognition, and by the time it's noticed, it's already moved on. When my ex-wife Lydia and I divorced, our daughter Mira was 15. Lydia had been unfaithful, a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about loyalty. But when the time came for Mira to decide where she wanted to live, she said something that stayed with me ever since. "I'm choosing mom. She needs me more than you do." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a quiet conviction that broke me more than shouting ever could. I didn't fight it. I told her, "I understand," and I moved on. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I'd learned the hard way that love can't be forced where it isn't welcome. Lydia had always been intense, dramatic. Every small inconvenience became a catastrophe. Mira had grown up trying to calm her mother's storms, believing that peace depended on her ability to hold everything together. I used to think I could protect her from that dynamic. I was wrong. The months after our divorce turned into years of silence. I called, texted, sent birthday gifts. Sometimes they were acknowledged with a polite thank you, sometimes not at all. Lydia kept Mira close, emotionally and physically, feeding her the idea that I'd abandoned them both. By the time I remarried, Mira had stopped replying altogether. My new wife, Tessa, had 2 kids from her previous marriage. Liam, a quiet, thoughtful boy, and Grace, a sharp-witted girl who just started high school when I entered their lives. They were hesitant at first, but over time they let me in. I never forced the father role, just offered consistency, patience, and the kind of stability that's built one day at a time. Grace was the first to truly see me. She'd ask questions about cars, college, even about her late grandfather whom she never met. Slowly, she started calling me Dad. When she asked me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding 9 years later, I didn't hesitate. I had no idea that choice would reignite a storm I thought had long passed. A week after the wedding, I got a call from Mira. It had been nearly 6 years since we'd spoken voice to voice. Her voice shook, not with joy, but fury. "So that's it? You replaced me? You walk your stepdaughter down the aisle and forget I exist?" I took a breath before answering. "Mira, I didn't replace you. You chose to walk away. I kept my arms open for years. But love doesn't survive in a waiting room. It needs participation." She scoffed. "You don't get it. Mom needed me. You didn't." "You're right," I said softly. "I didn't need you. I just loved you. There's a difference." That was the start of a long, painful conversation that peeled back years of buried truth. Mira wasn't angry because I loved someone else. She was angry because my love had continued without her. She wanted me frozen in time, unchanging, untouched, until the day she decided I was worth coming back to. As we talked, it became clear that Mira's world still revolved around Lydia. She said she couldn't visit often because her mother wasn't coping well. She couldn't build a life separate from Lydia because it would look like abandonment. Every boundary was guilt-edged and shaped by her mother's dependency. "Mom would fall apart without me," Mira said. "And what about you?" I asked. "I'll be fine," she said. "I always am," but she wasn't fine. She was exhausted. She'd learned to confuse loyalty with sacrifice, to believe that love meant never saying no to someone else's chaos. That was the night I realized my daughter had become her mother's caretaker instead of her own person. 6 months later, Mira graduated from high school. She invited me, but I couldn't go. Not because I didn't want to, but because that weekend I'd promised Grace I'd help her move into her first apartment. I sent Mira a gift, a letter, and a sincere note telling her how proud I was. She called me that night, crying, not out of joy but rage. "You missed one of the most important days of my life. I'll never forgive you." I listened quietly, then asked, "Who was there with you today?" She said, "Mom, Aunt Carla, Grandma, everyone." "Then you were surrounded by the people you've chosen to share your life with," I said. I didn't belong there, Mira. Not yet. To her, my absence wasn't about missing a ceremony. It was about losing control over my attention. She wanted the option of my love without the responsibility of maintaining a relationship. She wanted me waiting in the wings, ready to applaud whenever she decided to let me back in. As Mira enrolled in the local community college, she began calling me for help with financial aid, course selection, or advice when Lydia's meltdowns became unbearable. But she'd disappear again once things stabilized. Meanwhile, Liam, my stepson, was thriving. He was now in his senior year, balancing academics and sports, seeking my input on college applications and life choices. Grace had graduated college with honors and was accepted into a medical program. We built those milestones together. Weekends of late-night talks, shared meals, long drives to campuses. Mira saw the photos I posted when Grace graduated. That night, she sent a text. "You really forgot who your real daughter is, didn't you?" I didn't reply right away, because how do you explain to someone that real has nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice? When Mira was 20, she called again, this time with a mix of hope and demand. "I'm thinking of transferring to a 4-year university. I just need help figuring it out, and I need to know if you still see me as your main daughter." Her words hung heavy. "Main daughter?" I repeated. "Mira, I don't rank my children like job titles. I love all of you differently, but equally, that's not what I meant," she said, frustrated. "I just don't want to feel like I'm competing with them, but that's the problem," I said gently. "Love isn't a competition. Grace and Liam didn't take anything from you. They just accepted what you pushed away." She fell silent for a long time, then said bitterly, "So I'm being punished for being loyal to Mom?" "No," I said quietly. "You're living the consequences of your choices. You gave your energy to someone who needed you to survive, not someone who wanted you to grow." Mira didn't reply after that. The line went silent, and eventually, she hung up. Reflections of a father today. Mira is 26. She still lives with Lydia, who remains emotionally unstable. Mira's life revolves around solving problems that aren't hers to solve. She's smart, capable, and endlessly compassionate, but she's built her worth on being needed, not valued. Grace and Liam, on the other hand, have built lives grounded in independence and gratitude. They call, visit, ask for advice, and offer love without guilt attached. They chose mutual respect over emotional chains. Looking back, I see now that I didn't lose a daughter. I lost access to one. Mira made her decision years ago to build her identity around rescuing someone who never wanted to be saved. When she said, "Mom needs me more," she wasn't wrong. She just didn't understand that love built on need will always drain you dry. I didn't replace Mira. I simply kept living, loving, and guiding where my love was accepted. And though I'll always keep the door open for her, I've stopped standing in the doorway, waiting. It had been 5 years since my last real conversation with Mira. Life had settled into its quiet rhythm. Work, family dinners, Sunday phone calls with Grace and Liam. Tessa and I had just celebrated our 10th anniversary. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. And for a man who had once lived in emotional chaos, steady was more than enough. Then one evening, a name I hadn't seen in years appeared on my phone. Mira. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. "Can we talk?" We met at a small cafe downtown. She was 26 now, older, thinner, and carrying exhaustion that didn't belong on a face that young. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. "Mom's in the hospital," she said quietly. "She had a breakdown. They're keeping her under observation." My stomach dropped. Not because of Lydia, I'd long stopped expecting stability from her, but because of the weight I heard in Mira's voice. She wasn't just tired. She was empty. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered. "I've spent my entire life taking care of her. I thought if I just kept helping, she'd get better, but she never does. And now I don't even know who I am without her." I listened without interrupting. For years, this was what I'd wanted. To hear her finally admit that the life she built around Lydia was breaking her. But seeing her this broken, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. "I tried to reach out before," she continued, "but every time I saw pictures of you with Grace and Liam, I felt like an outsider. Like I didn't belong anymore." I nodded slowly. "You always belonged, Mira. You just never came home." She looked down, tears slipping past her composure. "I thought you'd wait for me," she whispered. "I did," I said softly. "For years." Relearning connection. The following weeks were slow and fragile. Mira started therapy at my suggestion, and for the first time, she began setting boundaries with Lydia, visiting her less, saying no without guilt, and trying to rebuild her own identity. At first, she'd call me after every breakthrough, nervous and hopeful. "Dad, I told Mom I can't visit every day," she screamed, but I didn't go. "That's progress," I'd tell her, "not cruelty." She began spending weekends at my house, awkwardly joining family dinners with Tessa and the kids. Grace, ever the diplomat, treated her with quiet kindness, even though I knew she still felt protective of the space we'd built together. Liam, on the other hand, treated Mira like a sibling from day one, offering casual jokes, stories, and no judgment. For the first time in years, Mira was surrounded by calm, and she didn't know what to do with it. One night, she confessed, "It's strange, Dad. I'm not used to people just being okay. No yelling, no guilt. It feels unreal. That's what peace feels like," I said. "It takes practice. Peace, however, is fragile, especially for someone raised in chaos." About 4 months into her healing, Lydia called Mira from the hospital, crying, claiming she'd been abandoned and couldn't handle life without her. Mira relapsed into the same old guilt. She disappeared for 2 weeks, ignoring my calls. When she finally showed up at my house, she looked hollow again. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. She said she was going to hurt herself if I didn't come back. I felt anger rise, not at Mira, but at Lydia's endless manipulation. "Mira," I said carefully, "you can't keep trading your life for her comfort." She flinched. "You make it sound easy. She's my mom, and I'm your father," I said gently. "But you spent a decade ignoring me for her sake. Tell me honestly, has she ever gotten better from your sacrifices?" That question hit harder than I expected. Mira broke down, sobbing into her hands. "No," she whispered. "She just finds new ways to make me stay." It took nearly a year for Mira to make real changes. She found a part-time job at a community center, started taking evening classes, and began renting a small studio apartment not far from my home. When she signed her lease, she sent me a photo of the empty place. Just sunlight, a mattress, and a plant by the window. "It's not much, Dad," she texted, "but it's mine." I stared at that message for a long time before replying, "It's everything, Mira." It wasn't a grand reconciliation. It was small, tender, and real. The kind of healing that doesn't need to be loud to matter. 2 years later, Grace got married. This time I hesitated before agreeing to walk her down the aisle. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to reopen old wounds. When I told Mira about it, she surprised me. "You should do it," she said, smiling faintly. "Grace deserves that moment, and I want to be there too." And she was. That day, as I walked Grace toward her future, I caught sight of Mira sitting beside Liam in the front row. She wasn't crying out of jealousy this time. She was smiling. Genuinely. Freely. After the ceremony, she hugged Grace tightly and whispered something I'll never forget. "You're lucky to have him. I almost lost him completely." Years later now. Mira's 31. She works as a counselor for teens from broken homes. Kids who grew up learning that love is something you earn through suffering. She tells them that love isn't a transaction. It's an invitation. Our relationship isn't perfect. It never will be. But it's real now. She visits every Sunday for dinner, bringing stories from her students, laughter from her week, and sometimes, quiet apologies that don't even need to be spoken anymore. Lydia still lives alone. Mira helps occasionally but from a distance. She no longer carries her mother's chaos as her own, and sometimes when we sit on the porch after dinner, she leans back and says, "I wish I'd come home sooner." "You came when you were ready," I tell her. That's soon enough. Love can survive silence, betrayal, and distance, but not waiting forever. If Mira had come back expecting the same frozen version of me, she would have found only echoes. But she came back to the man who kept the door open, not the man who refused to live while waiting. And that made all the difference. She finally learned what I'd tried to teach her all along, that love doesn't need to compete. It just needs to be accepted.